Don't you love when we ramble on? We're so entertaining.
Are you not entertained?
You're not entertained. We should get that one as a clip and then turn it into a GIF, and then we can laugh at me, especially because I'm looking so good today in my glasses.
Founder and CEO of More Insights and Strategy, Patrick Moorhead.
6, 5.
CEO of the Futurum Group,
Daniel Newman.
6, 5.
You know a lot about what's going on, Moorhead?
I think we do.
Hey everyone, welcome back. It is episode 255 or Moorhead. I forgot which number we were on. It's episode 254. Welcome back to another week of the 6-5 podcast. New format, week number 2. We're going to get better and better at this thing. Patrick, I may or may not be in an undisclosed location on vacation, doing a terrible job of resting, relaxing, and taking in the libations. There I'm going for the super moderator rhyme thing to start off. How you doing this week, man? You've been everywhere. Can't avoid
you. I was just in one place. I was in San Jose, out at GTC, Woodstock, Super Bowl of AI, whatever we want to call it. But yeah, I was feeling pretty bad for you, Daniel, especially your picture yesterday of you in a pool, having, the pool of tears fall on your back. You were lamenting your situation, but I just want to let you know, Bestie, I was praying for you at that moment. Okay?
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that. I don't know if people really fully understood the metaphor, but the attempt of taking vacation as a founder in the final weeks of a quarter, when you're in the process of building businesses, when most of your executive team is all on spring break, when you're one of the largest events, the most influential events going on. And then, of course, I just couldn't stay away. I mean, you were on broadcast. Like I had to keep the TV off to break my FOMO, because every channel I turned on, you were on every single one of them. It was like the Moorhead show. But I had to do a couple myself. Couldn't stay away either. And, it was GTC. I booked this trip like 6 months ago. I didn't even know the dates, Pat. So like I when I found out I was going to miss it, because I didn't know, but like everybody wants to go see AI Jesus. And
yeah, they really do. But Dan, you got to keep in mind though, like everybody does need some time off. And if you're not going to take kind of the Christmas, Hanukkah holiday, then this is the next best, because everybody's kids are off, right? I noticed my email volume went down significantly.
Yeah, everybody needs a little time away, I heard them say. I feel like breaking into Peter Cetera. You want to.
Hey, here's the great news, though, Dan. Hey, here's the great news. Your two joint ventures that we have together, 6-5 Media and Signal 65. I was not on vacation, and our presidents were not on vacation. So the wheel turns. Baby.
Yeah, they were crushing it. But yeah, we've got a really big week. Welcome back, everyone. Like I said, we appreciate you tuning in. I hope you'll be part of this community and subscribe. Join us for all the show. We look forward to getting more and more feedback as we continue to refine this effort. As a reminder, the format of the past, the first 252 episodes, I'm going to get there, where we used to do 6 topics for 25 minutes each, and we'd go on 15-minute long monologues. We know that was great and everybody loved that, but we're going to try to modernize the show a little bit. So the way this one breaks down is effectively, we've got this first section. It's called the Decode. It's a little bit like the older format, but we move a little quicker. We float back and forth a little bit more than we used to in the past. And then we go to this segment called the flip. And the flip is fun because the flip is basically where Pat and I take a side of an argument, not necessarily the side that we personally have, but we just basically flip a coin, and one of us gets one side and one of us gets the other side. And we got a really interesting topic today. And then, of course, at the end, we do our bulls and bears section. I desperately wanted for Pat to do some stock picking, but he fought with me about it. So we're just going to do bulls and bears. I'm kidding, buddy. I know you.
True. No, you do speak the truth.
I don't want to call you out on it, but what would be really funny is I talk all this noise, like I know what I'm doing. You should have done it just because you could have kicked my ass, and then you'd have been in the end and like, look at this clown over here making wrong calls. Although I got a lot of right calls out there. But anyways, we got a great show today. Just a reminder for everybody, this show's for information, entertainment purposes. Please don't take anything we say as financial advice. I feel like I got to say that every once in a while because these are big moments. The markets are crazy, and more and more I hear people looking for our opinions on these things. And I just don't want anyone to spend money as a byproduct of what we say, or maybe I do, but I don't, you know how that works. So, but we're going to dive deep into GTC. And then we've got a few other topics, a massive acquisition deal, Google and Wiz. We got several others there. There's some EU regulation updates. We're going to try to get to that as well. And then, of course, I'll surprise you guys in a little bit on the flip. I'm not going to tell you what it is right now, but you won't be surprised when we actually get there. Anyway, Pat, let's just dive right into the big topic of the week. You know, we joke the godfather of AI Jesus. He took the stage. Let's start with the themes. Give me the quick rundown of the big themes you took away from, what was it, like a 14-hour long keynote? It was like the Joe Rogan keynote podcast or whatever.
Yeah, I think this was one of Jensen's better keynotes, to be honest. I mean, there were literally no surprises. I did a social media post saying what I thought was going to be announced, and pretty much that's everything that was announced, and kind of the way it was described. What I'm going to wait for on the markets section is I'm going to look through this the lens not for markets, what the market wanted to hear, but what its customers and its ecosystem wanted to hear, and that was. Again, this all focuses on downstream benefits, right? All this infrastructure you can play in, but if consumer companies and companies that support businesses can't monetize that and make incremental profit dollars, then what's the point? I guess you could say share shift when you look at some of the consumer services and stuff like that. But that's what this is all about. And interestingly enough, this is exactly what Jensen hit on. Right. It was less, well, don't get me wrong. There was a ton of tech, but there was a lot of tech and science fair, but there was a lot of business, right? It came down to revenue per token, right? And what's the efficiency and the money that you can make on that. And I think he did a pretty good job on the hyperscaler data center point. He really brought it with a lot of additions, like a new data platform for the enterprise, and robots were all over the place, and I think he made a pretty good case for that. And if partner reaction was any reaction, any gauge, then I think he hit it. Kind of one final thing on the top line, like if I look at the messages that Jensen was trying to get across, and I think he did a much better job in the Q&A with us than he did in the keynote itself, was that first of all, Nvidia is in the infrastructure business, right? It's not a product company, right? And he reiterated, hey, so I laid out 4 years of roadmap that all my competitors know what I'm going to do. And his thought was, hey, when you're an infrastructure company and you have an ecosystem that has to build with you, you have to do this. And while he said, like no other technology company ever has, I can dispute that. There's a lot of enterprise companies that give long-term roadmaps. Second, his comment was that Nvidia is an AI factory, right? And it's all about revenue. And as for the, hey, do we skip Grace Blackwell and just wait for Vera Rubin? He's like, hey, quote unquote, and nobody says, guess what? I think I'm going to save my revenues from 3 years from now. Final point on what he wants Nvidia to be, and that's a foundational company. And to me, I view that as foundational tech. And he said, every company, every industry is at this show, and therefore we can't have surprises. Getting back to his earlier comment of being an infrastructure company. So those are my, kind of initial, kind of high level thoughts of this. Didn't move the markets, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, my thematics don't really have a lot of changes from the CES keynote. I think his mission is the same. I think his roadmap is progressing. I think there's this very interesting sort of decoupling that's going on from Nvidia and its biggest customers. And we'll talk about that, maybe even in the flip. We'll get to that a little bit more. But like I said, I really saw, I'll kind of hit 4 real quick high level theme bullets that I saw. One is, very, very important to him to get beyond the data center, to make sure it was very clear. When I say beyond the hyperscale data center, so he saw a move into the private cloud. That was a really big thing for him. Two was painting a picture of what the next opportunities are then outside of even data center, enterprise, private cloud. And that was really leaning back into, the autonomous vehicles, the GM win, robotics, humanoid, and painting the picture how big this is. Third was sort of tokenomics in terms of the DeepSeek moment. He really did slam the stupidity of the media and the stupidity of a lot of the pundits that just, by the way, I can't fathom how long this DeepSeek thing has lived incorrectly with so many smart people out there trying to correct it. But I think he did a good job of sort of talking about the scale of compute and the fact that, as more and more people use this stuff, like even DeepSeek, as it got used more, it got slow because it needed more compute. And then the final thing was, I really do think that he wanted to make sure that technology innovation leadership, the market, basically the tech leadership was clear. So even if there are people coming up behind him, he wanted to make sure that 4-year roadmap showed that they're so far ahead of this stuff that's going to come in behind it, that's fine. They can be the second, third, and fourth to the plate, but they're not even in the game when it comes to the kind of full stack AI, software, hardware, frameworks, libraries, development. And so Nvidia is thinking ahead while everyone else is just chasing them. That was kind of the themes I really saw here. Pat, let's jump in a little bit though, because you heard me kind of talk about that enterprise theme. Jensen was running around the floor again doing the Dell thing, Dell. Michael shared that, and then he was over at HPE doing HPE, and then I think he ran over to Cisco. Saw a good picture of him over at Cisco. He is the ultimate cheerleader, but he's got his whole keynote wave was kind of passed quickly on the hyperscalers, and then he talked about CoreWeave, and he talked about Cisco, and he talked about HPE and Dell. What are your thoughts on that? Kind of how he was framing that.
Jensen did not mention any hyperscaler by name, and I think there's something there, Daniel.
300 billion, dude, of capex, and not even a shout.
Yeah, but who did get rolled out here? It was Dell, it was Cisco, HPE, Lenovo, just like you said, and this ties into this theme that, I'm going to take a little mini victory lap here. I said early on that enterprise AI was not going to be dominated by the hyperscalers for the very reason that cloud, we're 15 years into the public cloud, and 80% of our data is still on-prem, right? So this notion of hybrid AI cloud is a reality. And who will enable this? The Dells, the Ciscos, the HPEs, and the Lenovos. It's interesting. Two thoughts here. CEOs of every one of these companies were there and active, with the exception of Lenovo with YY. I'm sure he had a good reason for not being there. Maybe it was spring break as well.
But on a boat.
Yeah. But Cisco has made a real resurgence, a surge into AI that is quite impressive. Dan, you and I got the download with Chuck at NWC and their executive staff, but it is impressive to see them jump on this. Quite frankly, Nvidia had to go to Cisco to get help for enterprise networking. Like, nobody wants to stand up two different flavors of front end networking. They just don't, and even back end networking. So that's really good to see. And by the way, I was pretty excited. I was actually quoted in the Cisco press release with Jensen and Chuck about what they did there. So that was kind of fun. Now, on an editorial statement, I hate to even say who I think is closest to Nvidia right now. It's Dell. It seems to be a Dell love fest. Last year it was a Dell love fest. This year it was a Dell love fest. And I think first and foremost, it's end to end, right? It's PCs to data center infrastructure and the infrastructure enterprise edge. It's storage, it's servers, it's PCs. And obviously, you know, that founder led, right, and the scale that Dell operates at. Dell made this announcement that said that they had 2,000 customers already within a year from them announcing their Nvidia AI stack. So yeah, no hyperscaler was mentioned by name on stage.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about. At least I have an opinion on that. But the um, interesting thing too, though, is kind of you called out networking, Cisco. We're going to see the infrastructure approach to networking all this AI, especially as consumption grows, enterprises buy in, data sort of lives closer to compute. Companies are trying to figure out how to implement AI and deal with kind of legacy and technical debt and, on-prem. Like we've kind of forgotten, and you just did the cloud thing, but co-packaged optics was something you and I both kind of did in our preamble. We said this will be big. We've seen more memory moving close to the compute, Pat. Now we're seeing, a lot of conversations about bringing, close, more capacity for networking in the system. Did you get enough there? Did you think we got enough? Did you hear enough? Did what you expected?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I wasn't just reading Morgan Stanley reports that I know were calling that. I had conversations with no less than 12 people on this who were asking, hey, what should we do? Is this good? Is this bad? And stuff like that. It's funny. I had said that CPO was for Rubin, and then the press release indicates that no, this is for Blackwell, but Jensen's slide says CPO is for Rubin. So trying to figure out, what gives here. But I think the company did a fine job articulating the benefits of it versus copper. And by the way, just for the layperson, right? You've got the scale up network that directly connects GPUs. You have the back end network, which connects GPU clusters. And you've got the front end network that presents all of the AI goodness to the rest of the enterprise, right? Connects it to all the different, to like run AI applications. Then you've got the segmentation of scale up versus scale out as well, and scale out is basically the front end of the back end network combined. So I think it did a good job articulating the benefits versus copper, which is literally saving megawatts of power. Right, I thought that was pretty good. And then they made a secondary case for the power savings and the density improvement you can get from doing co-packaged optics to the switch. And there's a panic in the run up to this that, oh my gosh, anybody who's involved in co-packaged optic pluggable modules is going out of business. Well, I think Jensen did a really good job, talking about, the coherence, the Cornings, the Lumentums of the world, even Foxconn and TSMC, who are participating with this. That you need lasers, you need transceivers, you need prism lens assemblies, everything else. And what wasn't discussed though, Daniel, unsurprisingly, is, hey, what are the potential downside of doing CPO, right? Hey, your CPO fails. Does your entire switch fail? You have to replace that with a motherboard replacement. What kind of modularity is in there? And also what wasn't discussed, actually it was discussed in the research, was CPO to the GPU, that I thought was fascinating. We've heard from companies like Marvell, who did a January announcement on CPO to the XPU, where you essentially it seems more reliable, but also a lot quicker and higher bandwidth. So our team and like your team, like Matt Kimball for scale up and Will Townsend for scale out, is going to be covering this.
Yeah, it's interesting, Pat. This is kind of the next. First, we brought memory. Now we're bringing the networking closer to the system, and it's basically, it brings efficiency, and it definitely enables scale up at scale. right? Is how I'd like to say it, but it's going to bring a lot of optimizations on energy and efficiency and connectivity. Again, I still think out of the rack, and they're going to see a lot more copper. But I think in the rack, there's just a lot of arguments that the optics just delivers greater efficiency. Let's sort of, I guess the last thing on this topic, because this is kind of an extended special edition, we got a lot of other stuff to get to, but is the roadmap, Pat. You dug into the 4 years ahead. We've got Rubin, Feynman, we got Blackwell Ultra. We've got this kind of GB200 might get retired or early due to the complexities. GB300, we heard, and of course Dell's first out, as always. Kind of your point is, I just think Dell's the all-in on Nvidia company more than anyone else. Not that others like HP aren't, but they just seem to jump first, and I think that's Jensen really appreciates that about them, and you're seeing that in his sort of cheerleading that the Dell. I mean, God, Michael just has to be just thrilled. But the ability to sort of post this roadmap, historically speaking, Pat Gelsinger did a roadmap like this and everybody puked on it, So Jensen is jumping ahead, kind of showing how much more he's going, from HBM3 to HBM4. He's showing, again, the co-packaged optics, the bigger dies, the more GPUs per. Eventually we're going to have a box this big, Pat, with like 800 GPUs in it. It's so cool how fast this stuff is moving. Having said that, what could go wrong? In my opinion, the biggest thing is you saw with Blackwell, the complexity from Hopper to Blackwell is so exponential that he's had problems that they just didn't have in the previous generations. And this is something that happens to semiconductor companies. This is something that's happened to others like Intel, where you do get that aggressive and then mistakes get made. Now, the world kind of has seen this perfection of NVIDIA over the last several years, and everyone's just like, there's no mistakes. It's going to be. But then Blackwell sort of exposed a little bit. It got a little squishy. And by the way, NVIDIA doesn't do everything. You got foundry partners. You got, your Synopsys. You got your IP partners. You got compute, CPU being brought in. You got all the cores, the tensor cores being brought, and it's not all just NVIDIA. It's a big ecosystem, as you see in these semiconductor slides. My opinion, Pat, is the biggest risk of putting out this timeline is the market's formulating its valuation of the company. Companies are doing their planning and their roadmaps, and 1 year, generation to generation, is incredibly aggressive. And I guess he kind of gave himself 18 months from Rubin to Feynman, but that's still really, really tight. I give him a ton of credit for being so aggressive, a ton of credit for being so open with the roadmap, bringing the ecosystem along with them, Pat, proving that they have technology superiority. But what do you think can go wrong with having so much out there and such an aggressive roadmap?
He's tripling his rack power.
We talked about that, didn't we? Power.
Like everything can go wrong, but I think he's really trying to get ahead of it, right? In a very public way. And, whether it's Schneider or whether it's, anybody who does cooling, anybody who does
Vertiv.
Water. Yeah, Vertiv. Yeah, who I had never heard of until the past couple of years, right? Getting them aligned on building for next generation. Boy, Daniel, wouldn't it be smart if they built this generation's data centers to tackle 2028 problems, right? Notice for Feynman, there was no platform defined, right? So who knows? Maybe that's a gigawatt per gigawatt or megawatt? Gigawatt. Yeah, kilowatt. Yeah, kilowatt, gigawatt. So we just don't know. And as much as I know, I like to say that, this is the NVIDIA show and they're going to pull like everybody with it and they're going to be the only one making money. If you are a core provider in the NVIDIA ecosystem, you need to get on board and you need to make money. And there's probably 500 different variables that are required to pull this thing out. Quite frankly, some of them have not even been invented yet, right? Every one of these these power solutions from Vertiv are essentially custom, right? Because it's a constantly moving target. This notion of having a standard for a rack is a joke, right? That used to be the case for standard workloads, but today it's off the table. We are installing Grace Blackwell into our Signal 65 data center, and like we have to consider now. I was talking to Ryan about, he's going to have a whole new power system for Blackwell Ultra and Rubin. That stuff's not cheap.
Yeah, it's interesting how that's proliferating. We kind of went back and forth, small nuclear reactors, and we heard about that for a while. Then it got kind of quiet, and I think this has more to do with sort of the market's exuberance around it. But yeah, the complexity here, Pat, like a lot of what, we went and did some of the tours at Dell. This was non-NDA stuff we could share. And they were talking to us about how basically all the design work they're doing for rack cooling isn't going to work from this generation to Rubin. Like, so everything that's been designed to make this generation work will have to be done again, which lots of CapEx, Pat, which is good for spending, but it's not necessarily, as scalable as kind of previous generation of computing. It was a lot more interchangeable, at least in the last several generations of it. All right, we got a lot of Nvidia. We're going to come back to some things here. There was some other big news though this week, Pat, and I'm guessing you were asked about it in at least a few of your interviews. I came out and basically said 90% chance this Google-Wiz deal does not happen.
That's strong, man. That's very, strong. Very strong. Like, and, why do you think that?
And I was super, and trust me, I heard about it a little bit, but I was looking at the new administration, and first of all, there's kind of this belief that Trump is friends with everybody in big tech, and that he yes, all the big tech CEOs came down to Mar-a-Lago and kissed the ring, but you remember Trump's rhetoric. He was not happy with these companies, the sort of ad mafia that did all the blocking of pandemic-related stories, of various news about him, and over the last few years. And Trump's a guy that holds a grudge for some time. Now, having said that, it's not just him; it's the new appointees to the FTC who have kind of said that they're going to look into this thing. And I want to say, before I say why I don't think it's going to happen, I actually love the deal. Like, I'm very I think after our conversation with the founder of Palo Alto, and how he talked about the cloud being where security takes place. Multi-cloud is sort of the future. Having a multi-cloud solution like Wiz within the Google cloud portfolio, super powerful play. Having said that, it's a $30 billion plus deal. It's one of the largest deals. Right now, you got Juniper trying to tie up its deal with HPE. It's stuck in regulatory. That deal, to me, is less invasive to companies that are not a massive global threat, as you don't see HPE getting sued by every regulatory body around the world for its practices. Like Google, literally, I think it's another topic on the docket. We're going to talk about more digital regulatory against Google. Now, again, great company, brings great innovation. We know Europe is the ultimate speed bump toll of the world. They love to sue and fine big tech companies from the US as a way to bring revenue in, as opposed to driving their own innovation. And I'm steadfast about that. But that means, again, this deal getting done, first of all, can it get through the US right now with a sort of bitter Trump that's still a little bit upset about how he was treated by all these big tech ad companies? Second, Google's already being looked at under a number of different regulatories. They're trying to break the company up, Pat. I mean, they're going to split them up and let them do $30 billion deals in some of the biggest, most exciting security companies. So that's out there. Most of the world has various cases against Google right now, including Europe. They're all over Europe. China's going to be complicated if they need China. I mean, Google's banned in most of China, so I don't know if they're going to need it. I just think the regulatory environment is really tricky right now, and I haven't seen deals of this size get through. So while I like the technological aspects of the deal, I just think it's a big, aggressive try right now. And this could be another kind of Figma one or an ARM Nvidia one that we spent a lot of time talking about. And there's a lot of reasons to like the deal, but just can't get done. I don't know. Are you of the opposite? Do you think I'm too bearish here?
So I just want to hit before I dive in that, just a quick blurb here. Daniel, I've been talking about hybrid multi-cloud fabrics for a long time. And the idea of having security as a hybrid multi-cloud fabric is not new. Cisco has it, where they can secure your data whether it's on-prem or in the public cloud, and they have network fabric as well. So this is just that, and it's a positive thing. Enterprises are sick of buying a solution I can only run for the public cloud in enterprise SaaS, or I can only run it on-prem with this. So I really like it from that point of view. Trying to guess what will happen with regulatory is not easy. I'm not going to take the shot on this one, but I will give you another point of view, which is if you look at the way that most antitrust laws are written, right, it cannot put you into a monopoly position. And if I look at market share of what this would provide to Google, and when I think of the Wiz, the Wiz is being combined with Google Cloud, which is the number 3 player. And then if you look at, their market share in the security market, I don't think it breaks any of these rules. But with that said, there's a potential challenge there because it's Google and what it's doing on the consumer side. But I think if regulators look at it as a Google Cloud type of entity, it's going to be a lot easier for them to get it across the line.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if they split the company and then do the deal. I mean, I'm being a little, provocative here because I don't want them to split the company. I think it'll break the experiences that are created across Google that have a lot of value to people. But I mean, just as a note, like even just this week, Pat, and I won't spend a lot of time. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but Google was hit with 2 charges of breaching landmark EU rules just this week. They're ordered to, what do they say? And then Apple was as well. And again, same thing. But Google could be fined 10% of annual sales by Europe. And again, we know that's not going to happen. The EU is going to take a couple $1 billion off Google and then move on. It's like a speed bump process, and they do this every so often. But remember, this kind of deal has to get through regulatory everywhere. It's not just in the U.S. So you've got a complex environment. I agree with you, but I also don't think the Juniper and HPE breaks any deals either, breaks any true monopoly laws either. And I think there's a lot
Listen, I think the HPE Juniper thing, I think their competitors got the jump on them.
Sure.
Right? I think that's what happened. Very similarly, what happened with the VMware Broadcom.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of politics that happen within these. And to your point, why you maybe don't want to take the shot. I'm being a little bit aggressive here, but I just think people are overestimating the Trump administration's willingness to support big tech M&A. And so I hope in a lot of ways, like I hope I'm wrong. Like, in most cases, I kind of want to be right so I can do the victory laps. But in this case, I actually want to see big tech M&A because Apple desperately needs to acquire some sort of AI company because they cannot stop sucking at it. By the way, this isn't really a topic for the show, but I just want to call it out on the air. I found it hilarious that Apple took its chief of its Vision Pro product to put on top of its Siri product. So they basically they in the spirit of trying to show that they understand how bad their AI products are and see how bad Siri is, they take a guy that's running another part of the portfolio that's also wildly underperforming and give Siri to that person. So now they can have 2 products suck under one person. I can't get my head around this, Pat. I know this isn't the topic of the day, but good Lord. I mean, any thought on that? Did you read about it?
No, I did. And the first thing I thought was Vision Pro is loser and AI is loser. You put 2 together, what are you going to get? Now, if I had to convince myself it was an important thing, Vision Pro was a very difficult multivariate, multi-year problem that needed to be solved with a lot of new invention. And so if I had to talk myself into it, then we could do that.
Yeah, so we've got to keep moving. We're gonna skip past there's so much Decode to cover, Pat, and you and I.
Yep.
Nvidia, joking. Nvidia that just took up some. We're gonna get back to Nvidia. Okay, I'm not gonna say Nvidia anymore. If I keep saying it wrong on purpose, eventually I'm gonna go on here and say it wrong on accident, and then I'm going to embarrass myself like I embarrassed the CEA guy for saying it wrong 15 times at the CES keynote. All right, Pat, let's move over to the flip. Will Nvidia continue to dominate AI chips in the face of Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, ByteDance, OpenAI, Broadcom, Marvell? Everybody seems to be doing or helping ARM supporting a custom chip. How is this going to play out? Pat, this is the Nvidia continues to dominate, or will they run into real competition? Let's flip a coin and see which one you got, Pat.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
You got the four, man. You're gonna have to make the argument that this is not really competition.
Yeah, Dan. I mean, first of all, historically, Nvidia really hasn't had any competition from anybody on this topic. I know we talk a lot about ASICs, we talk about a lot about AMD, but what we've squeaked out, 5% market share out of that, and Nvidia has 95% of that.
Yep.
A lot of reasons for that. There's the hardware, which I know everybody talks about. First of all, it's not even a GPU, right? It's a programmable piece of silicon, right? There's no rasterizers on there for graphics. There's nothing you can do to make it a GPU. So I think even the moniker that this thing, is a graphics card is just wrong. And then, secondly, if I look at the hardware, it's not just the chip, right? It's not just bringing up a GPU chip and calling it a day, right? It needs a full system. It's a full rack approach, which I think pretty much everybody agreed to at the conference. Haven't heard anybody say that this is not a rack scale challenge at this point. And if it takes a village to pull everybody together, I remember when OpenCL was going to decimate CUDA because it was an industry standard. And the problem is when the NVIDIA gear is operating at 10 times the speed of an industry standard, people just blow across it. And then, if you look at the what this could mean to hardware in the future, look at we talk about this combined R&D. If you look at what NVIDIA, the cash that they will be able to invest in future R&D into the hardware will likely surpass everybody who's doing ASICs and also AMD. And I didn't finish my thought on the platform piece, but you have to do the compute, which is the CPU, the GPU, scale up network, and scale out network to pull this thing off. But hey, let's go into the software, and it's called CUDA, right? People have been trying to get out from under CUDA for a long time. And, the hyperscalers for, let's say, a managed service, and the hyperscalers for their own enterprise SaaS have been able to not use CUDA. I wouldn't even say effectively, because let's not forget that NVIDIA still has 95% share out there. But if you look at the enterprise, where it's not just CUDA, right, where NVIDIA is standing up an entire enterprise AI stack with models, with frameworks, and just look at the companies who have gotten behind NIMs. Pretty much every enterprise SaaS company has gotten behind NIMs. All of the great companies, right, like ServiceNow, SAP, and Salesforce, and Adobe, they all have NIMs. And guess what? You can't run a NIM on anything but NVIDIA hardware. So, yeah, Dan, NVIDIA will continue to dominate AI chips for the foreseeable future until, kind of like, Intel screws up right? With execution, kind of like, pulls an Intel of some sort.
Yeah. So here's why you're wrong, Pat. That was everything, and that was how everything was. But when you take 6 to 7 companies that have trillions of dollars in assets, and you basically erode their margins, and you tell them that they have to buy, and you take away all their power of control, you risk their long-term prosperity because you start to tell them how they can operate their business. Inevitably, you're going to start to see some whiplash. We already saw Apple kind of say no from the beginning. Now, if their AI didn't suck so bad, they would be a great testimony for what this could be. But what you have heard is a lineup now of CEOs get up on stage, whether it's been Sam Altman, whether it's been Sundar Pichai, whether it's been Andy Jassy, and all of them now are touting their own wares of building their own GPUs, quote unquote TPUs, quote unquote XPUs. But here's how it's actually going to break down. And the good news is it's not zero sum. And the good news is it doesn't mean Nvidia just goes away. But what it does mean is this, is every one of these mega hyperscale cloud provider has internal workloads and external workloads. Their internal workloads are things like search or generative text or recommendation engines. And all these companies are going to increasingly and more rapidly move to using their own in-house silicon because they can do it much cheaper. They can build their full stack. They have the software programming and engineering in-house. They can abstract away from CUDA, build their own libraries, and get more control over their world. The thing about that, though, is that's a large percentage of the total consumption of AI. You're thinking Meta, all their social platforms. You're thinking about Google and all their search platforms. You're thinking about, potentially down the line, it could be Microsoft and all of its tools for office and productivity. That's where I think it is heading. Having said that, where it lands, you got $1 trillion of AI chips by the end of the decade, according to Morgan Stanley. You got $500 billion, according to Lisa Su, and I bet you it lands somewhere in between. What I end up seeing happening here is you see something like the 95% go down to like 70%. So the good news is, and this is probably the worst part of my flip because I'm kind of arguing your side just a little here, Pat, is you will see their dominance erode as a percentage of market share. But as we head to $1 trillion, I still think there's a whole lot of upside for everybody in this particular space. Pat, Broadcom certainly is going to be the most disruptive. I think ARM is going to come in and get more and more in the way and become competition to NVIDIA over time. And if Marvell can get generation to generation success, they are in the game too. But these hyperscalers, they don't want anything to do with giving all their margin away, all their control away, and being completely beholden to limited capacity and a company that is going to be working aggressively to kind of control the distribution of its market-leading innovations. They want to compete. So therefore, their dominance is going to be up against the other biggest companies in the world who are all gunning after them. It was clear this week at GTC, even in Jensen's lack of mentioning these companies. I think the bromance, the friendmances, the alignments of these companies, it's coming to an end. There's a codependence, but it's not out of love. It's out of necessity. All right. Yep. So let's go on to our last segment here. Bulls and bears. Pat, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I just want to get your quick take. We're going to do these a little faster for everybody out there. Don't you love when we ramble on? We're so entertaining, according to ourselves.
Are you not entertained?
You're not entertained. We should get that one as a clip and then turn it into a GIF, and then we can laugh at me, especially because I'm looking so good today in my glasses. The Wiz agreement, I kind of alluded to this, but just as a high level, Pat, does this show, and should this $30+ billion deal spur more excitement within PE and VCs? I mean, it's been a quiet period of time. Is this what they needed to hear to get fired up again, to start pouring cash in? I mean, AI money's been going in, but does it change anything?
It's unclear, Daniel. I think you nailed it at the in another conversation where you said it's just, we're not too sure where the Trump administration sits. I know all the VCs got behind Trump, or most of them got behind Trump for the election, thinking that he would be this big catalyst for not only GDP growth, but also to loosen the strings on M&A. and we haven't seen that yet. I mean, let's not forget too that VMware was approved under even the prior administration, right? So I think it just showed that even if you have a hating big tech, um, FTC and Justice Department, you can still get something through. I think it's too early to call, but maybe this is the litmus test, Daniel. But my gosh, these things take so much time to get through. But we will see the moves. I think some of the early moves, right? Will we see the, hey, we're going to investigate you, and then we're going to sue you to slow this thing down. I think this will be the ultimate. One of the arbiters of that. I think the other thing that could help is we see an IPO go well, right?
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of them. Reddit went pretty well, went way up, kind of came back down. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, look, the money is pouring in VCs. They have to, PE and VCs have to put money to work. I mean, that's the good thing for companies, builders. But obviously, when multiples get pulled down, when transactions aren't happening, when second, third, fourth series are not, A, B, C, D, Z's and F's, and things aren't turning to IPOs or acquisitions, it starts to create risk in terms of bringing funding into these things. So, yeah, it's going to be definitely something to watch, Pat. Another thing is, I know you went on Bloomberg, talked MAG7, talked Nvidia. It seems to be going down, down, down. I mean, it's been a rough, I guess, who would expect Trump to start a tariff war and get us into a fight with every country in the world and try to, bring down inflation in a completely atypical way, which we've talked about with tariffs on the show, Pat. But the MAG7, are we at a value point? Is this like the time to buy? Or I know you're not a stock picker, but what the heck?
Yeah. So I just got off Bloomberg. I did a 7 a.m. hit, and I'm going to give you the same story, which is, there's two things going on with MAG7. First thing is this overall risk assessment, interest rates, recession, GDP, consumer confidence, business confidence, tariffs. People aren't too sure what to do, but I think the more relevant one is I think it's calling into question the downstream benefits of AI, right? How do consumer companies make more money? How do businesses make more money with AI and not just protect share? And therefore we're seeing MAG7 decline. And I don't think Nvidia gave us any more confidence to the future about what the downstream impacts of AI can be. I mean, all I heard was cheaper cost for tokens with Blackwell and Rubin, and then I think all of the AI edge and robotics stuff. That's a 5-year pull, and I don't think the market reacts to anything outside 18 to 24 month window. So people are just sitting around. There is a lot of money coming into equities. Interestingly enough, which I'm trying to piece through, they had a Bank of America report that I was looking at that talked about the flow of money into equities is so high. You can imagine the drop of equities if all that money wasn't coming in. People, mostly wealthy people, are putting monies into equities right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm pounding the table on some of these, like Google. I mean, it's just retracted to its lowest forward multiple in a long, long time. And despite my concerns about its ability to get deals done, the company has incredible moats, great growth, great margins, great business. I worry about Tesla. I mean, I love what Elon's doing, and I know it's unpopular, but I don't love everything about the way. And that's like the thing I always feel like I have to like contextualize or put put a bit more insight around that, because I don't love the way things get done. But look, when you run a business and you look at how waste is being managed, and I like the fact that he's trying to suss it out. By the way, I don't know if you saw, but Twitter got a $44 billion valuation this week. It was in the Financial Times. Remember, everybody was celebrating that he was losing like 30 billion, 35 billion. Well, it's back. How did he bring it back? He brought it back by basically cutting a ton of costs out of the business. He made it efficient, and he ran it and he grew it. And now it's become probably arguably the world's most important source of information in terms of real-time fire hose across the political spectrum. Okay. But having said that, like Tesla, I worry about because basically right now, I mean, half the country just absolutely, I mean, they're lighting cars and dealerships on fire because they just don't agree with the politics. And so I don't condone any of that stuff, but it's just a signal to me of how far. And obviously, if you were someone that was big on green and sustainable, that bought your Tesla under the onus of sort of the green potential of having an electric vehicle, God, you must be in a really tough situation right now, kind of floating in those two headspaces. Like, you know, what happened? You know, now what are you going to go buy? I saw one of the politicians sold his Tesla and bought a Yukon or a Tahoe or something. And I'm thinking, wow, you just went from a very efficient electric car. But Pat, across the spectrum, I mean, look, these stocks are super defensive. I know like over time, Nvidia is not playing out that way. Apple's very defensive. You know, these companies can grow. They have so much operating leverage that they can grow through the most difficult economic period. So even if we go into recession, it's really hard to bet against these companies because they don't stop growing. They just grow a little slower. But you're talking about revenue growth, margin growth, expansion. And of course, these companies are all implementing AI at a big scale, and they're able to take a ton of cost out. They won't do it like Tesla. They won't do it like Musk. That's just a different style. They won't do it like Hawk. You could say Hawk. Like there are certain leaders. And by the way, Lip-Bu is looking like he's going to be one of those kinds of leaders over at Intel. But they can definitely make more efficiency, grow these businesses, and stay safe. I like these companies here and now. All right, one last quick one before we shut down the show, Pat. I just want to get your take on the Ampere deal. I mean, this one wasn't out of left field, but you start to see how all the cards play out here. It's basically felt to me like, did ARM just acquire Ampere, through this weird SoftBank thing, but they left themselves some independence by saying it's not ARM, it's Ampere. But we all kind of know ARM's going to get into design. Like, what's your take on that one?
Gosh, Daniel, I got so much to say on this one.
Let's keep it to like 2 minutes because we both got to go, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, ARM is in the business of soft IP. Ampere is in the business of data center ARM-based chips. Did you see the also SoftBank acquisition of GraphCore? Like, is SoftBank accumulating all of these capabilities to go after the frickin' brass ring, which is CPU, accelerators, IP, and chips? Imagine if this was an OpenAI a Stargate play. But on the other side of my mouth, I'll be like, none of this stuff is quick, right? If you weren't working on a Stargate accelerator already for OpenAI, like how is that going to work? Like, how many years is SoftBank going to have to work on that? But Masi-san is an absolute genius in his success and in his failures. And I think this is going to be really big. And it could be one of these change the industry type moments for SoftBank. We don't know exactly what they're doing, but I've got about 5 scenarios on what I think they could be doing, or what I would do if I were him.
Absolutely. It's a Stargate deal to me all day long. This is just one more player, which just makes my flip even a little bit more right. They are going after it right now. Nobody wants to be left out of this $1 trillion market opportunity. I don't care how you slice it up, $500 billion, $1 trillion. Remember, right now, Nvidia, with all of its prowess, it's $100 billion expected this year. There's another $500 to $900 billion annual revenue tied up to these accelerators right now. Nobody is sitting on the sideline. None of these companies want to sit here, be beholden, and just let their margins erode and all be beholden to a single player.
By the way, one thing supporting, again, remember the flip is not exactly.
Yeah, we're just, by the way, reminder, we're locked.
It's a debate, but it's like OpenAI has one app. Okay, they have one app, and I will bet money that they did not write to CUDA. They wrote to lower level types of things.
JAX
and
PyTorch.
Yeah. There's no way that they're using CUDA. There's no way they're using CUDA libraries or CUDA models. They make the model, folks. So, yeah, could make the case, but where's SoftBank IP for accelerators? Where is it? Who's creating it?
I guess they're going to have to put that on their list of things to acquire. I mean,
they did acquire GraphCore, but I don't know. I don't know. And I know that OpenAI doesn't have enough people to do what Google has done with TPU. That's on their 7th generation.
By the way,
Right.
That's why I'm extremely steadfast that the external workloads, the ISVs, the partners, the enterprise data center companies, the big enterprises, and that's why the big cloud companies will have a big NVIDIA lot of capacity. Because, like I said, though, for internal workloads, it makes a ton of sense, and that's where market share will get eroded. But GCP, AWS, all these companies, like, they just can't move fast enough, and they can't offer enough software support to enable these developers. Now, in time with AI, could that change? Absolutely. I just don't see it changing fast. So, remember, everybody, the flip is Pat and I take a side. It doesn't mean it's the side we believe in. So when you see the opinions out there, just remember that we may or may not actually believe what we're saying. But on the other hand, we might. So anyways, I got to say goodbye now, Pat. I got real work to do. This has been a lot of fun. This has been the
You're on vacation. God, I hope you're not going into a meeting.
I got a couple more meetings this morning. And then I'm going to go to the pool or the beach or the ocean or do whatever for a little bit. And I'm going to drown myself. If I don't come back, it's because it was because I came out of our revenue meeting very, very discouraged. And I just went ahead and I just let myself float into the ocean and with no real way to get home. But seriously, everybody, thanks so much. We really appreciate you tuning in, being part of this show. This is episode 254 of the 6-5. New format, new show, same hosts. We appreciate y'all tuning in, but we got to go for now.
Who that is?